All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, this current NBA regular season is shaping up to be one of the more entertaining that I've ever seen. Not just because of the style of play and the obvious talent of most of the star players, but also because of the ramifications after this season in regards to free agency. Kevin Durant made some very interesting comments after the Golden State Warriors' first game, their first victory of the season over the Oklahoma City Thunder. He stated that in his view, teams are starting to catch up to the Golden State Warriors and that they know their schemes. Now, could that mean that Kevin Durant is also planning on leaving and maybe taking the knowledge that he has of the Golden State system to another team so that he can lead his own team to a championship? Because as we all know, as long as Kevin Durant plays, no matter how stellar his play is and how much he stands out, no matter how many finals MVPs he wins, he's never fully going to get credit on the Golden State Warriors for his contribution, as great as he is. And eventually, I believe that he's going to move on and try to take that wisdom with him and copy his guru, his Bengali, Mr. LeBron James. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Once the NBA is back, last night we got to see the Warriors begin their title defense against the Thunder, who were without Russell Westbrook as he continues to recover from knee surgery. Golden State beginning the night celebrating their latest title. It was ring and banner night. Steph Curry and Kevin Durant.
And once again, I think that Steph Curry would not mind Kevin Durant leaving, because I think that he would like to have another 3-4 years to himself to put up big numbers, just to see what type of numbers he could put up in a system where everything is going through him like it was back in 2016.
Getting their reversible championship rings, they're loving it. There's the banner. All right, under 2 minutes to go. Warriors leading by 2. Steph Curry looking good. Hits the jumper, finished with 32 points, 8 rebounds, and 9 assists. So the Warriors were up by 4. Now 30 seconds left to play. Golden State up by 5. Durant driving, getting the tough floater to go, but his arm hits the ground hard. Durant following through on that tough shot. He would be okay and finish with 27 points, 8 rebounds.
I tell you, that dude, Steven Adams, that dude is so strong, he does not even know his own strength. He's one of those guys that if he hits you incidentally, he can hurt you.
Rebound, 6 assists. The Warriors go on to win this one 108-100.
Every game is not going to be a 140 to 99 shootout for us. I mean, we're a team that can do pretty much play tough, play physical, hard-nosed, close game, East Coast type basketball, and we play West Coast style. So, it's going to be more games like that this season, especially with teams trying to, starting to catch up with what we do a little bit and starting to know more of our schemes.
I agree with that. A lot of teams are starting to at least understand their schemes better. I'm not going to quite say that the teams are catching up with them. I think that a lot of them are going to be amped up to face the Warriors. And, of course, teams are going to adapt. But it's going to be very interesting. I think that these are going to be some great playoffs once we finally get there.
Now back to First Take.
Stephen, interesting words by Kevin Durant saying that games are going to be closer than we expect, obviously.
I think that games are going to be closer than we expect all across the league, because I think that the NBA is as talent-rich as it's been for the last 30 years from top to bottom.
Boogies won't be back for a while, but I guess teams will be using them as a measuring stick moving forward. What do you make of those comments?
Well, I think they're real. The reality of the situation is that you're the hunted. You're the reigning 2-time defending champions. You've won 3 of the last 4. You've been to the NBA Finals the last 4 consecutive years. You're the prohibitive favorite to capture a 4th NBA championship in 5 years. You have the greatest shooter on the planet, the greatest shooting backcourt we've ever seen, and you have one of the top 3 players on the planet Earth, as far as I'm concerned, in Kevin Durant. Of course.
Well, they have arguably 2 of the top 3 players on the planet Earth with Kevin Durant and Steph Curry.
Of course you're the hunted. So when you combine that with the fact that they are fully aware of what the priority should be, that 82 games and what transpires in a regular season ain't that big of a deal for them, which Draymond Green and others have openly admitted. You got to remember, they're going out, and far more nights than is customary for other teams. Individual talent is saving the day for them, not schemes, not emotion.
I agree with you, sir. That's very important to understand. And really, for most of these teams all across the NBA, when you're well coached, you should know what the other team is running. So the real difference is going to be what the talent disparity is.
And not enthusiasm, not anything. just a love for the game of basketball, and on a particular night somebody's got it going on, and this night somebody else has got it going. Why? Because what matters to them is April, May, and June.
Agreed.
Going through these 82 games, it's a walk in the park for them. It's tough for them.
The main thing for these 82 games is that it's going to be a very long preseason for them to prepare for the playoffs. I'm sure that many of their players want to set personal milestones over the course of this season. Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, they won't admit it publicly, but of course, they write down things that they want to do. I'm sure that Steph wants to have another 50, 40, 90 season. He's only had one in his career. I'm sure that KD wants to have another one. I believe that they both have one each in their career. And I'm sure that Steph also wants to average 30 a game, because that would be something that would truly set him apart. I believe that he's still the only player in the history of the NBA to average 30 a game and go 50, 40, 90. Because Bird did it back in 88, but he averaged 29.9. Steph averaged something like 30.4 a couple of years ago. So these are little milestones that great players create for themselves. Scottie Pippen had a great interview where he stated in the third year of their three-peat run that he and Michael would set little personal goals, not even just for the season, but per game. Who would get more steals or more deflections, things of that nature.
To prioritize and to take it seriously, because they know in their sleep they're going to win 50 games, and they'll...
Oh, no, in their sleep they're going to win 60. I mean, keep in mind, they had all their top players miss at least 10 games last year. I believe Curry missed damn near 30 games, and they won 58 games last year. So if they stay healthy for the season, they're going to win 70 by mistake.
They'll be in the playoffs. So it's just a matter of whether they're going to win 60 or 70 games, and they're going to be interested enough to do it. That opens the floodgates for teams of a lesser talent to come at them and knock them off on some nights, because it's the regular season and there's no urgency.
KD is showing you he's an all-time great player in his prime. He's in his prime now.
Absolutely. All great NBA players, they reach their absolute prime from about 28 to about 31.
And he's showing you why the Warriors are so dangerous and so great. You know, LeBron James formed a super team with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh with the Heat. And they went to 4 straight finals in a weak Eastern Conference, and they won 2. They didn't three-peat.
The Eastern Conference was relatively weak during the Miami Heat run, but they were not that weak. I mean, they started their run really at the very, very end of the Boston Celtics run as a prominent team. You also had the Indiana Pacers, who were an incumbent, a potential incumbent, who were rough and rugged, but they did not have a very high basketball IQ. But the Boston Celtics, they had a very high basketball IQ, but they were just too long in the tooth. But still, I wouldn't call that conference weak per se. I mean, it's weaker than the Western Conference, but it was not weak per se. It wasn't as weak as a couple of years ago when the Cavaliers got to the finals and damn near swept everybody. I mean, that was the weakest Eastern Conference that I can remember a couple of years ago.
The Lakers three-peat started with Pat Riley when he copyrighted the phrase in the 80s. They never three-peated back then. Three-peating is hard to do. Phil Jackson teams have done it. That's it. It's hard to do, because to maintain that level of greatness, not just attrition with injuries and age, but also, as Stephen A. said, focus and interest is difficult. And what KD is showing here is wisdom. The Warriors are offsetting the fact that they have played an extra season when all is said and done through the past 4 postseasons when you add up all the extra games.
Right, they have. They've definitely played probably at least another season overall. And then when you factor in that each playoff game is almost like playing 2 NBA regular season games because of the intensity. Of course, they have a lot of mileage, but they know how to pace themselves. Right now, once again, the Warriors are at their absolute peak as a team. They really don't even need to be coached. All those guys are 28 to 30 years old. They've all seen everything. You let them run on automatic. Steve Kerr really should only have to coach maybe 10 games this entire season.
They're offsetting the wear and tear with wisdom. Remember, the reason the Warriors aren't working on 4 straight already, the reason they haven't won 4 straight and are working on 5 straight right now is because after they won the championship, the very next year, they were chasing a record. Remember, they wanted those 73 wins. They talked about it. Steph Curry was playing overtime minutes in really meaningless games. Oh, the Spurs had a good record. Spurs weren't going to have a better record than the Warriors.
That's not true. Everything that Max Kellerman is saying here is complete narrative and it's bullshit. Steph Curry was playing less minutes than most of the prominent superstars in the NBA. You could look it up. Look at Steph Curry's minutes under Steve Kerr. They went down by 5 minutes from the Mark Jackson era. So this notion that the reason why the Warriors did not win the championship in 2016 was because they went too hard in the regular season, that's complete bullshit. Steph Curry's minutes were far fewer than most of the top players in the NBA that year. It was just not meant to be. All of a sudden, Steph Curry has a foot injury in the first game of the playoffs against the Rockets. Then he comes back in game 3 and he slips on the floor, and it just was not meant to be. They get to the finals, and Andrew Bogut gets his knee caved in by J.R. Smith, and Andre Iguodala starts to have full body spasms, and Steph Curry's injury gets aggravated or exacerbated to the point where he can't even blow by Kevin Love. It was just a whole bunch of strange issues that started to compile one on top of another. And it took all that for the Cleveland Cavaliers to defeat them in 7 games. But this narrative that they lost the finals that year because they went too hard in the regular season, no. You have one opportunity to set milestones in life, and you have to take advantage of them. They won 73 games. To me, that team was nowhere near as talented as people make them out to be. They were never a super team. They had a player that had a super season that year, and they played as one unit. They played as one unit as much as any team that I've ever seen, that 2016 Warriors team. But no, they did not lose in the finals because of how hard they played in the regular season. That's nonsense. And the fact of the matter is that coming into almost the last week and a half, the San Antonio Spurs did have the opportunity to surpass them as having the best record in the NBA. I believe the Spurs ended that season with 67 wins. So they were right there until about the last week and a half.
By that time, it was all but over. And Steph Curry against lesser teams was playing overtime minutes.
That's a lie. That's a lie. Steph Curry against lesser teams, they were blowing those teams out, and Steph Curry would sit down after the third quarter.
Because they were chasing wins. And you know what?
Now, there was a game in Utah, a classic game, about maybe like the last week or week and a half of the season, where Steph Curry did play into overtime, and they did try to win that game. But by then, you were so close. Why would you not go for it?
And he was hurt. It was Steph Curry 100%.
No, he was not hurt. He was not hurt in that game against Utah. He did not get hurt until the playoffs.
Percent in the finals? No. Was he as healthy as he may have been in the finals? No. They learned from that. They not only got Kevin Durant, but they became a wiser team. And Kevin Durant's comments point out just how dangerous they are right now.
So listen, they're dangerous because we know that they're going to be there when it really, really counts. But understand that the Houston Rockets really exposed them to this degree. You know, when you're one of the...
Well, brother, you can't really say that the Rockets exposed them because they lost. You can say that that a certain chink in the armor may have been slightly highlighted, but exposed is a very strong term.
One of the reasons why in the National Football League you see defenses complaining so much is because they know that they're going up against ultra talented individuals. But you know something? When you cave their chest in, or you cause whiplash because you push their back in or something like that.
Pause.
All of a sudden it weakens them.
Everyone's got a plan until
they get hit. Yeah. That's what I was getting ready to bring up. And so as a result,
I'll never forget how the New York Giants changed up Tom Brady's. They changed up his whole outlook on life in that first Super Bowl back in 2007. They had that man. Whew, that man was scared to death in the pocket.
As a result of that, Houston comes in last year, and it is elite as Golden State was. P.J. Tucker, Trevor Ariza, and Chris Paul got all up in those brothers. I'm talking about from a physical perspective. And there were days where Golden State was a bit compromised. They didn't look like themselves. Now we get to this year's roster. Understand the 2 players that they rely upon coming off the bench is a Sean Livingston, 33 years old, Andre Iguodala, 35. What that says to me, again, you're older, you may be more vulnerable, and that I'm going to be real interested to see. And remember I said this name. It sounds like nothing. If this kid, 25 years old out of Duke, Quinn Cook, can come off the bench, I like this kid.
No.
Quinn Cook can play. All they expect from him is to be able to spell Steph Curry and hit some wide open jump shots. They're not even going to ask him to run the offense. That's going to be Sean Livingston's job and Iguodala's job. But, you expect Livingston and Iguodala to not play any more than 15 to 17 minutes a game this season. They're going to rest them for the most part. They're going to try to hold them off for the playoffs because at the end of the day, should they face the Celtics in the finals, Iguodala and Livingston are going to have to be able to hold their own against those young Lions coming in off the bench for the Celtics. Because the Celtics, they do have a great bench. When you have Rozier and Marcus Smart coming in off the bench, Iguodala and Livingston are going to have their hands full.
No doubt about it.
If Quinn Cook can come off the bench and give you quality minutes during the regular season, showing that he's able to spell not just for Steph Curry, not just for Klay Thompson, but also Sean Livingston. That's going to help.
The trade-off for KD
immensely.
The trade-off for KD was depth. That was the trade-off. So Cook's got to step up.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. We'll see how everything goes with the Golden State Warriors and how many of these other teams attack them. So peace.